Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful Sunday, or wherever you're listening, or whenever you're listening, or wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help me continue to create this content and maximize our reach. My friends, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your emails, your notes, your texts, your tweets. I got to tell you, the most enjoyable ones are the constructive feedback. I got a couple. Somebody mentioned that a past guest used slaves instead of enslaved, and used slave owners instead of enslavers. And I appreciated that. That's verbiage I try to make sure. And sometimes when folks are in a rapid fire interview, words slip out, but I appreciate, because words matter. The person who emailed me, I appreciate them calling that out. And I want each of you to know to continue to keep us accountable, and let's have those conversations in a positive and constructive way, because that's how we become better. It's how we do better. We've got a great show lined up today. Wajahat Ali is here. He's a public speaker, an attorney, Data 3 author, writer on Substack, and we're going to talk about our democracy, what is just going on with the Democratic Party, and what we need to see from Democrats to truly take back the mantle of leadership and give confidence to the American people that they are capable of leading. Before we get into the show, I wanted to give a shout out to our teachers and share a quick short story. We're seeing these attacks on DEI, these attacks on how teachers teach, and it reminded me of a memory. Uh, when I was in sixth grade, my science teacher was Mr. Edwards at Glencrest Junior High School in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And he would give us these aliens for extra credit. And what these aliens were, they were a little post-it note with an alien stamped on them. And it was like a little, Martian guy with a little thing coming out of his head. And you know what I'm talking about, right? The classic alien thing. And he made a deal with us. He said that if we brought the alien back to him in 10 years, he would buy us lunch at our favorite restaurant. Now, when you're 11 years old and your teacher offers you free lunch at your favorite restaurant when you're 21, that's a pretty exciting endeavor. You're thinking like, wow, free food. This is the best thing in the world, right? It's heaven. And so I took a few aliens that I got for extra credit. I tucked them away in a shoebox I had for keepsakes. And I look forward to this free meal at literally a lifetime away, right? When you're 11 to 21, it's a whole lifetime away. So 10 long years pass, and I'm graduating college. And I come home and I open up that shoebox, and what do I see? I see an alien staring right back at me. And I had completely forgotten about these things. I had forgotten about Mr. Edwards' aliens, about saving them, about his offer to buy lunch. And as an adult, now seeing myself a lifetime removed from that 11-year-old kid, I finally realized what the whole point of the free lunch was. It was never about the free lunch, ever. And it's a lesson that I think about when I see teachers today. Teachers today have to struggle through inadequate pay, through being constantly scrutinized, through inadequate resources, buying their own supplies, active shooter drills, the accusations that they're indoctrinating our children, exposed to every virus imaginable, but still they push through. They go the extra mile. They stay the extra hour. They work the extra weekend. They wipe away the extra tier for students that they may never see again. And they do it because they love the children they teach, because they believe in a better future. I genuinely loved Mr. Edwards' science class. He was kind, he was hilarious, he was passionate, he was stern, but he was fair. And he truly cared for each of us. And I wish I had realized that lesson sooner, that Mr. Edwards knew all along, that it was never about buying us lunch. It was about him truly caring for us. It was about him seeing the gift of what his kids had done with the knowledge that he taught them over his decades and decades of teaching. Mr. Edwards passed away before I could catch him for that lunch. And I miss him, and I think about him every so often, especially because my middle child is a science junkie. But I'm grateful for that wisdom and for that lesson that he taught, because that's truly made all the difference. So give a shout out to the teachers in your world, to your kids' teachers, and let them know that they are appreciated, because they are literally holding this country together. They are literally training our next generation. And they're not doing it for the pay. They're not doing it for the prestige. They're doing it because It is a privilege, and it is something that they're deeply passionate about. And as you see these ridiculous attempts by this MAGA fascist regime to shut down the Department of Education, to claim that teachers should be ranked on a scale and given pay according to that, remember that these are people who sent their kids to esteemed, privileged private schools, not to down those teachers, but these are people who have never invested in public education and don't realize the immense value of public education. Reject that nonsense and instead stand firmly behind your teachers, get involved with the school boards, get involved with your local student council programs, with your local PTAs, because that is how we start to protect our democracy on the local level. All right, you're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show. When we come back, we'll have Wajahat Ali, attorney, author, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on becoming American. It is in stores. Now, you're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We just had a detailed conversation about teachers, and I want to bring in someone who I consider a teacher. Wajahat Ali is a recovering lawyer, a dad of three amazing kids, married up definitely, and an excellent writer. And we're here to talk about the collapse of our democracy and what we can do to save it. Wajahat, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if I'm a teacher, more of a survivor, trying my best to protect our democracy, which is under full-scale assault. I hate to tell the world I told you so, but this is where we are. We're brown Cassandras, and Donald Trump and his doggy, minions are doing exactly what they said they would. It's all a big grift, and they're coming after our social safety net. They're coming after our teachers, the Department of Education, to make the bro oligarchy great again. But there's more of us than there are of them, Qasim.
There are, and I think so. There's a couple things you said there that I really want to double down on. One, if I'm beyond frustrated, like I'm having difficulty articulating my anger at the lack of a plan from Democrats.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they put their fascist manifesto in a 900-page document on the internet, Project 2025, for everyone to read. And we all wrote about it. We read it. We put it out there. We warned this is what's going to happen. We warned that the polling does not look good. We warned that refusing to cut off arms to Netanyahu is going to likely result in a loss because Trump is lying that he's the peacetime president when he's not.
Hmm.
None of it was listened to, and all of that is bad enough. But then to have Trump win, and for 2 months while Biden is still in office, we said, Biden, you got to sign this executive order. You got to protect folks this way. You got to do this. Does literally none of those. And then Trump comes to office and starts this, right wing, let's break down the separation of religion and state. Let's install Christian nationalism, theocracy, with billionaires literally lining the
Mm.
front row of his inauguration. And Democrats are like, well, God, we thought that the institutions would hold. What happened? We didn't even see this coming. I mean, I what's is your opinion that this is incompetence or being complicit? Because I can't tell anymore.
No, I think both. They're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. They're just not. And I've been saying this for a while. And of course, obviously, there was a contentious election. And, a lot of people are like, why are you criticizing them? Because I want them to do better.
Yes.
You said a lot there. Let's unpack it. Midway in the Kamala Harris campaign, and she only had 2.5 months, she barely lost. But midway in the campaign, I'm sure you've seen the data, they kind of abandoned the progressive agenda
Yes.
and started bear hugging Liz Cheney. Okay.
Yeah.
They had more conservatives at the DNC than a Palestinian or a transgender. There was
Yeah.
no Palestinian or transgender speaker, right? Speaking about Palestine in particular, many of us, I wrote two pieces in the Progressive and in the Guardian where I was very firm about my belief that what Israel was doing was war crimes, wrong, and later, according to Amnesty, a genocide. And I told Democrats that this will be a moral stain and it'll hurt them. And then I said to folks, listen, I know it's terrible, but the lesser of two evils is exactly that, the lesser evil. So
Yeah.
Democrats and Republicans aren't the same on this, vote Democrat, even if you have to hold your nose. But folks, Democrats, for the love of God, the bar is so low. And this is where they really effed up, Gossam, which is really, I think it's if they do an audit of this, I mean, it is damning. After so many of us told them, listen, the bar is really, really low. It's not just Arabs, it's not just Muslims. There's a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives who will stay home because
Yeah,
they believe that we are complicit in war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu's ongoing genocide.
right.
Just have a Palestinian speaker. Just have a speaker. You have this beautiful speech that everyone loved from the family member of the Israeli soldier who was killed, I believe, Goldberg, Poland. Have a Palestinian speaker come up right afterwards, side by
I agree.
side. And they
Yep.
didn't even do that, Qasim. And then you had Joe Biden literally tell, I don't know if he caught this, but he told Donald Trump, "Welcome home."
Yeah. No, I
And,
saw it. He's smiling at
and
them, all chummy with them. How do you call a guy a fascist a week ago
there you
and then
go.
with open arms say welcome home? And by the way, to your point about the Palestinian speaker, you had the perfect speaker. You had an elected Democrat Palestinian woman, a state rep, Ruah Roman, in the swing state of Georgia, who had her speech vetted. And in her speech, she doesn't bash Democrats, she doesn't
Oh,
bash Kamala Harris.
she published it in the Mother Jones. We read it.
Yeah, it was one of the most thoughtful pieces I had ever seen. I mean, I had friends of mine who are hardcore conservatives who said that was a really good speech. I don't know why you
Yeah.
guys didn't run with that speech. That would have been a really effective speech. And you mentioned the audit concept. YouGov and IMEU did a poll
Oh yeah, yeah.
post-election.
Last month, right?
That's right. And found that 19 million Joe Biden voters stayed home in 2024. And and I want to point out that some people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense because Harris didn't get 19 million fewer votes. Well, no, we activated more voters. There's a new contingency of young voters coming in, and so the delta isn't 19 million. But the difference is this: that those voters staying home, their number two reason for staying home was the economy. And folks forget that poverty increased 66% under the Biden-Harris administration. They did a lot of good. The CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction, all good stuff. But poverty for working people still increased 66%. The number one reason, Wajahat, number one reason why these folks stayed home, 29% said
Gaza.
that they did not want to be complicit in war crimes. They
Yep.
acknowledged Trump is going to be as bad or worse, but they were promised decency. They were promised an international rules-based order. 77% of Democrats, 30 polls before the election confirmed that 77% of Democrats wanted Biden to stop funding Netanyahu, wanted Harris to simply say that when I'm president, I will cut arms to Netanyahu. You cannot win an election. I'm sorry, I don't care what the issue is. When 77% of your base is saying, hey, this is really important to me, whether it's abortion access, whether it's LGBTQ equality, whether it is racial justice initiatives, whether it's stopping genocide, if 77% are telling you this is not going to fly and you don't listen to them, we all lose. And that's what we're
But you,
suffering through right now.
but also you saw the difference between Republicans and Democrats in this way is that Republicans in bad faith, nonetheless, met their voters and their base somewhat halfway, right? So they're like,
Yeah,
okay, Candace Owens, you might be an anti-Semite and might, praise Hitler, and there's a schism within the base between you and Ben Shapiro, but welcome in. Okay, Nick Fuentes, you might be a white nationalist and anti-Semite, but welcome. Okay, Joe Rogan, you claim to be a contrarian, even though it's all BS. Welcome. Okay, Andrew Schultz and you mediocre white comedians, welcome. What
yeah,
Kamala and Democrats said to their base, exactly what you were saying is, shut up. Just shut up and you better vote. And you better
yeah,
vote for us. And we're gonna slap you across the face twice. And look, that guy's a fascist. He's a fascist. So you got two choices. You're gonna vote for us, you're gonna vote for that guy. You're gonna vote for us, you're gonna vote for that guy. And a lot of people, especially when it comes to Gaza, and this is the mistake that they made. She still would have lost, but she probably would have lost by less. But she wouldn't have by Democrats, I should say, wouldn't have alienated a generation of voters, right?
yeah.
Because that generation of voters is like, man, you're telling me my choice is between a person who is complicit in a genocide versus a person who will be far worse on that and everything else. And furthermore, you don't care about us. And furthermore, you seem to be forgetting that in 2020 you won because you attacked these critical progressive
Right.
social issues. Let's not forget, folks. that they were talking against white supremacy. They were riding the wave of the George Floyd protests. They seem to have forgotten all of that. And still now, Qasim, if you hear Hakeem Jeffries and others, their plan is to court the mythical center.
Yes, it's nuts. And Wajahat, I will respectfully disagree on one thing. I think that we would have won. I think
Think
Harris would have
so.
won.
Interesting.
And here's why. One, I think she had an excellent pick in Tim Walz. I thought he was a fantastic pick. I
But
don't
he
think,
was neutered.
but he was right. And the reason why they picked him is because he started this amazing trend of these guys are weird. I'm not afraid of them, but they're weird, and let's call them out for what it is. And he's got a phenomenal progressive policy record. What I love about Walz was that he was really a moderate centrist Democrat, and he read the tea leaves. He read where the country was going, and said, you know what, I'm going to lean in heavily into being what's considered progressive with free school lunches and expanding healthcare access and decriminalizing marijuana and passing the Equality Act and protecting abortion access. And that's why they picked him. And when you see the early enthusiasm, it was a spike. And you saw finally Kamala, swinging at the fences against Trump. Two, people saw her as the young, dynamic woman that we've been waiting for. It wasn't just a young version of an old white guy. But then when she came out and said, I would not do anything fundamentally different, I thought that was fatal to her campaign. And
Oh
then,
yeah, fatal, fatal.
like I said, 30 polls said that not only are 77% of Democrats committed to ending arms to Netanyahu, but when you look at these polls, when you really break it down and get into the data, every single swing state, all 7 swing states, anywhere from 5 to 8 time voter turnout. People said, I'm 5 to 8 times more likely to vote for Harris if she simply says, I will stop arms to Netanyahu. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not trashing Kamala Harris. I thought with what she was given, with 100 days to meet 300 million people, she ran a pretty good campaign. I
Hmm.
still put this on Joe Biden for not dropping out when he said he was going to, for
Yes.
not waiting for there to be an actual process like he had committed to. He came out and endorsed her without anyone's approval or consent. And then for continuing to kind of take Trump at his word that he's not going to, do the fascist things that he's doing. And so I think we would have eked out a victory. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why, after seeing the success in 2020 of leaning into the left, you mentioned white supremacy. Biden launched his campaign with the Charlottesville
Yeah.
gas scene and saying, we are here for the soul of this country. By any objective measure, he failed at doing that. And I think we need to be honest about that. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Wajahat Ali, writer, public speaker, recovering attorney, author of Go Back to Where You Came From and Other Helpful Recommendations on Becoming American. It is published already. Go out and pick it up. And Wajahat, you have a phenomenally quickly growing Substack as well.
Oh well, it's a humble Substack that could. I appreciate your support and your advice. I jumped in the Substack waters in the summer. It's called The Left Hook, and it was started with the intention of pretty much doing exactly what the Democrats weren't doing, which is building up a community of progressives and liberals who really want to fight back. God bless Michelle Obama, but she even recanted on this. She said, when they go low, we go high. And I've always said, when they go low, you take them out by their knees, which is a legal UFC move. And there is a growing, I think, righteous rage, a frustration that you just mentioned, not just with Gaza, but also milquetoast Democrats who keep veering to the center, even though it was the center that screwed them. It was the center that neutered Joe Biden's very progressive, what would have been a very popular economic agenda that might have given Kamala the boost, right? It was Joe Manchin. It was Cinema. It was the Republicans who kneecapped him, right? If you recall, folks, it was the progressives who tried to save that big, bold economic agenda that Biden first came in with. And then the second half, he couldn't do as much, right? And
Yes.
also, it was the progressives who kept saying, listen, you have to give some pushback on Israel. Say, okay, enough is enough. He's crossed every single one of your red lines. And
Yeah.
I think with Joe Biden, I always joked that like he makes love to the ghost of Golda Meir. Like no one understands. Like he just,
Wow.
and talking to
Wow.
people in the administration who knew him without giving names, they said he's lost on this. Him, Kirby, McGurk, just like completely lost and completely ideologically firewalled from the rest of the world. And then you have these advisors, Qasim, like James Carville and others who are literally repeating Republican talking points on wokeness and CRT, like literally doing their work for them with a complete wrong take and bashing the black POC. Because let's be honest, folks, when Republicans talk about CRT and wokeness, when rich white folks are talking about it, they're just using the N word in a nice
Yeah,
way. And they're
right.
saying black people, Muslims, POC, LGBTQ, and women. We're not stupid. We might not be that smart, folks, but we're not that stupid. You're talking about us, right? And so this is a schism, Qasim. And what's happening now is you're seeing a schism within the Democratic Party. I think this is necessary. This is a battle for the soul, not just of America, but what party or what movement is going to reflect the righteous rage of the majority that is not satiated with civility, but actually wants progress and justice. And so at the left hook, I am trying my best to, if you will, build this ethnic Avengers with you and other folks
Yeah.
and build it out because, as you know, we don't have the funding and the type of incestuous network that the right wing does, that they've built out over the past 40 years.
That's right. And the data reflects that. While we were throwing concerts for Taylor Swift and Beyonce, they were spending heavily on social media and were out impressioning us. Like an impression is how many times people see your content. We just had the data I saw 500 to 1. When we talk about why there was a 30-point
Wow.
swing to the right with young voters, it was because they were targeting them 500 times for every one time we were targeting them. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer praised Cory Booker for holding a PowerPoint last month on how to use social media. I'm like, my God, you're killing me. You're
And Chuck
absolutely
Schumer is the same one who said in the last 3 weeks, Chuck Schumer is the one. Gosh, we're getting killed by these septuagenarians, man. Chuck Schumer is the same one. He goes, Americans are aroused. We're aroused, and the
yeah,
Republicans are arousing them. And, we're going to do something. And then, literally, Republicans are like, we have power. We're going to kill you. And Chuck Schumer is like, we might rules and the law and in order. And
wow.
then who did they, I don't know if you saw this a couple of days ago, did you see Jerry Connolly, uh
Yeah.
74-year-old, a young 73-year-old, excuse me, who's recovering from cancer? He's doing a hit, like the camera is askew. He's not looking at the camera. They could have had AOC. They could have had Jasmine Crockett as the director of communications, who's just everywhere.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
And who did they choose? Debbie Dingle. Have you even heard of Debbie Dingle?
I only have because her husband, John Dingle, is someone I admire. He died in office and she took a spot, which is kind of the problem with a lot of politics right now, the nepotism and the family aspect of it. But you're right. She's not by any means the future of the party. And that's the point that I think frustrates me is that we have amazingly talented young people. We have people who know what they're doing, who know how to communicate, who know how to be effective and get things done, and they keep getting sidelined. Somebody said this that the only people that establishment Democrats despise more than Republicans are progressive Democrats. And
Oh
that's where I
no,
feel
for
like
sure,
we are
absolutely
right
for sure.
now. Let's talk about solutions because I know one of
Well,
the
Qasim, you know what? They hate their base, and in going to your solutions, right?
yeah,
It's they refuse to acknowledge that their base is black, their base is progressive, their base is
yeah,
a multicultural coalition. They desperately want this older, wider, wealthier base that looks like them, because the establishment is older and wealthier and wider, whereas Republicans are realize their base is white Christian evangelicals.
yeah.
But Steve Bannon said 10 years ago, he said we get the white voters and then we peel off just enough POC, we win.
Yeah. And he's right. And it's been an effective model. And this is the point. I think this is fundamentally the difference, right? Where Republicans will lean into their base and will fortify their base. It's like an effective marketing strategy. Like Volvo, when you think of Volvo cars, what's the first thing you think of? Safety.
Safety.
Right, exactly.
There you
Right?
go. Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't a trick question, right? It's safety. And so if Toyota comes out and says, we have the safest cars in the world, Volvo's alarms are going to go off. They're going to spend a ton of their marketing budget to be like, no, 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 no. We have the safest cars. We're going to flex and push you out. We're going to, you know, throw some sharp elbows, make sure you don't come into our space. If Toyota comes out and says we have the most fuel efficient cars, Volvo might throw a few bucks at that. They don't really care because their thing is safety. They just need to peel off enough people of the fuel conscious to make sure they can supplement their safety core. With the Republicans, they know that white evangelical Christian base is their core. They know that's their core. And if you know, when Democrats try to reach that demographic, they run into a brick wall every single time. And we're seeing that happen over and over again with the 1994 crime bill. That was a bill to try to peel off conservative voters. It didn't work. The welfare reform, that was an attempt to peel off conservative voters. It didn't work. The Patriot Act was an attempt to recruit conservative voters. It didn't work. Every single aspect of policy that we've seen Democrats take that leans right is with this mythological idea that we can peel off conservative voters. And it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy and the football. And every single time Democrats fall flat on their ass and Republicans show, hey, we are the strong ones. We are the ones that you can trust to have strong leadership. We may be crazy, we may be insane, but we are strong. And that's enough for most voters because most voters are not these high. I mean, people have things they got to do. And so they are just going to see what is giving me the perception of strength. That's why we're seeing the shift of young people. And I'll throw it back to you, but I wanted to make this final point. The policies that the Democrats should be running on are extraordinarily popular policies. Universal health care, more than 70% of Americans across the board support. Reproductive health access, abortion access, more than 80% of Americans across the board support. Getting rid of these corporate and bank subsidies, 90% of Americans support, like 92% want to get corporate money out of politics. These are the issues that Democrats could lean into and actually activate the 36% of registered voters who just didn't vote at all. But for some reason, they keep going after this conservative base that simply doesn't care because they're not interested in flipping their votes. They're interested in winning elections.
I think, you know, and you've seen the data also, it's the perception and the projection of strength, even though it comes through the incompetence, the rank incompetence, insecurity, fear, and loathing of the Republican Party, in particular in Trump. They sell it. And because they sell it and they know how to flex power, I give Republicans credit in that when they get power, they flex it. They don't give an F. They don't even care if they lie. They're like, we have power. What are you going to do about it? It's something Democrats should learn from, but they can't. They're just not built this way. And so as far as solutions go, this is going to be a test of leadership. There's a vacancy right now, Qasim, and I said this before and I'll say it again, is that who is willing to step up? This is where you step up and grab the ring if you're a Democrat, because there's a vacancy of leadership. You've seen the polls where people are fleeing the Democratic Party or are not enthusiastic about it. I believe the Democratic Party, the officials who will be rewarded are the fighters. Who's the one who steps up and fights, who punches them figuratively in the face, in the stomach, takes out their knees, does anything and everything possible to actually represent the people? Because at the end of the day, look, it's like a sports team, right? You want your team to fight. Even if your team loses, you know what you say? Man, that's my team. They went to the end, right? They gave it their all. They got screwed by the ref on that one play. But man, they came to play. These Democrats they're the ones who confirmed all these terrible people. They're the ones who helped pass Lincoln Riley Act, right? Less Fettermans, less Gallegos, more AOCs, more Crockett's. And so the one who's going to fight, the one who's going to call them names, the one's going to punch them in the face, the one who's going to be unabashedly apologetic for calling it out, I believe they will reflect the growing righteous rage of the American public, because it's only been 3 weeks now. And I thought this honeymoon would end in 6 months. I'm going to update that. I think this honeymoon's going to end by May, because it's going to be so, I thought it would be July, but they're so incompetent and so disastrous that I don't know if you saw that video yesterday where it was on social media. I'm forgetting what outlet, but a man went and talked to 3 white farmers, and they're like, "Would you vote for Trump again?" They're like, "Nope." And I'm like, and I told them, I said, "Whoopsie, we tried to warn you." So you need that type of spirit, number one. You keep that type of 24/7 communication, and then you need to go against the billionaires, the 1%, and the oligarchy, because You need to reassert that we are the 99% against the 1%. And now you have it in front of you. You literally have Elon Musk and his nose picking son literally in the office acting like the president. It cannot be more clear the messaging, Qasim. And
I
now you're
completely
seeing,
agree.
I don't know if you see some of these young bucks, these young House Democrats, they understood the assignment. They're calling him a dick. They're calling
Yeah,
him President Elon. They don't give an F. Like they're not apologizing. This was the type of spirit and the fighting spirit that people wanted.
I completely agree. And you know, the to go back to the farmer point you made, the reason why they're not going to vote for Trump again is because he suspended funding from the infrastructure bill. And farmers had made investments in their properties expecting this money to come through as promised by the Biden administration. And now Trump is arbitrarily suspending it just to be a psychopath. And now they're worried about their farms being shut down and having to sell their family farms because they don't have the money coming in. And it's just amazing to me that the same folks who are like, we don't need government handouts, are now begging for these government handouts, which I don't consider government handouts. This is what the government should be investing in. Let's invest in our farmers. Let's invest in our working class. Elon Musk doesn't need another $20 billion in corporate contracts, or I'm sorry, in federal contracts for his corporate welfare. Let him pay for it himself. And
The news that came out just today.
what's that? What came out?
Trump administration set to purchase $400 million worth of armored Teslas. I mean, the grift, it's just so naked.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, they're trying to figure out why your grandma Betty is getting $65 a day in Social Security benefits. It's absurd. I think I saw also that Musk's companies are getting $8 million a day, and they're trying to cut Social Security, which is $65 a day, which is the average take home for somebody who's paid into Social Security their entire life. We're down to our last couple of minutes, and I want to close. I think right now, whichever Democrat goes against leadership and says, look, you guys are failing. Here's the messaging, and just goes full throttle ahead, they're going to build incredible support. And they don't need to be belligerent or destructive about it, but they need to be assertive about it and say, look, your way hasn't worked. It didn't work in 2016. It barely worked in 2020. It didn't work in the 2022 midterms, and it's not working. It didn't work in 2024, and we cannot sacrifice another cycle, or we may not have another election. The one who does that effectively is going to be the one who I think will nationally rise to the top. Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, was asked a few weeks ago, who is the leader of the Democratic Party? And as eloquent and as thoughtful and as smart as she is, she didn't have an answer. She said, well, we got a deep bench. But okay, but who's a leader? They don't have a leader. I think whoever has the courage to step up and say, I'm just going to assume the leadership mantle by getting the messaging out there, I think the populace is going to reward them, and attacks on them from the establishment are going to fall to the wayside because they're going to have the support of the people behind them.
I agree with you. And I think you're already seeing it, this quiet rebellion. You're seeing people like Raskin. You're seeing people like AOC. You're seeing people like Crockett. You're also seeing like Murphy and others who see where the wind is blowing, right? Van Hollen. And I think, like it's like they're not going to openly say it. They're just going to do it. And they realize this old guard just isn't built for Schumer, Durbin, Dingell, Connolly, Pelosi. I'm even going to go a step further. Hakeem Jeffries. I don't think he has.
Not built for it.
Yeah, and so they realized, our communities are getting destroyed. We tried it your way. We lost. And let's be honest, folks, the only reason Biden won in 2020 was because of COVID, or else Trump would have won then as well. This has been a losing strategy for a decade.
It really has. If Trump was halfway competent on COVID, he would have won in 2020. There's no doubt about it. I feel like this is the scene at the end of Avengers Endgame where we're all beat up and Captain America's got his broken shield and he still straps it on. And the line, I could do this all day, right? Where he's still ready to fight. And then the cavalry arrives. And for me, I think this is that moment. That is the cavalry gonna arrive? Are the Wakandans gonna arrive through Dr. Strange?
Sam says on your left.
On your left, right? That chills, right? Like you got chills at that moment in the movie. And I think that's where we need literally folks on the left to step up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. Because back to where you started this conversation from, Wajahat, there are more of us. Statistically speaking, there are practically more of us. I don't think Texas is a red state. I think it's a voter suppression state. I don't think Georgia is truly a red state. I think it's absolutely a voter suppression state. And we saw that happen. And this is where, I said this the other day and the tweet went viral. the frustration so many Democrats have when we see our elected representatives say, well, what do you want us to do? We're in the minority. The frustration we have is we just saw Mitch McConnell from the minority derail so many of the Democratic agendas, including the Build Back Better, like landmark key initiative of Joe Biden. Use those tactics to stave off fascism, and then let's have a plan for 2026. Final word to you, Wajahat.
No, amen. I think this is a fork in the road, and it's up to the rest of us. Look, the Avengers, I've said this before, aren't coming to save us. You can't outsource it. Specifically, when you outsource it and you expect someone else to save you, that is a welcome sign for fascists. And it's going to take all of us. Every single person who is listening, everyone can do something in your family, in your home, in your school board, in your church, in your mosque, in your local office. The bulwark against fascism begins locally. So don't give up. This is going to be a long walk, folks. It's a long walk. Keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on the ball. And just to give a final Super Bowl analogy, after we witnessed the most black halftime show of all time, thanks to Kendrick, black people have had their eye on the ball, and they know that the path towards justice and equality, it's not a Hail Mary pass. It's in the trenches, inch by inch, yard by yard. 1 yard here, 2 yards there, but you keep pushing forward. This is the way, folks. We all come out at the end. And if it's exhausting for you, it's okay. Take a break and also invest in what I call joyful resistance. You want your children to be seeing you as happy warriors, because I don't need martyrs. I don't need you to burn out. I need you in the long run to not just save our democracy, but to reform it, to finally reflect the country that projects itself, but hasn't been a true democracy for the rest of us. So this is how we go from civility to true reform, justice, and equality.
Very well said. And your point about Black Americans and the leadership they've shown, all the way from Mumbet, the first woman to sue for her freedom in Massachusetts in the 1700s, to the Black civil rights leaders that enabled the end of Jim Crow, to the leadership that we're seeing right now, through and through. It's a great example for all of us to follow and hold on to. Wajahat, where can folks find you? How can they support you? And how can they subscribe to your Substack?
Oh no, just you can read me at the Left Hook. It's a Substack, the Left Hook. There's no paywalls there because I'm a terrible capitalist. You can also see me on all the social medias. I co-host the Democracy-ish podcast on Monday and Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time with Daniel Moody. And for the first 100 days of Trump's second administration, I'm co-hosting America Unhinged on Zeteo with Francesca Fiorentini, Tuesdays and Thursdays live, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Zeteo's YouTube channel.
Beautiful. Wajahat Ali, attorney, author, writer, most importantly, a dad of 3. Pick up his book, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on becoming American. It is out in stores now. I've read it. A fun and phenomenal and important read. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was Wajahat Ali. Make sure you follow him and subscribe to him on Substack at The Left Hook. As we close out the show, I wanted to talk about 2 things. One, about your pocketbooks and what the Trump regime is doing by shutting down the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is going to hurt your checking account, your bank account, your pocketbook. And I want to talk about this because people hear words like CFPB, financial protection bureaus, and they kind of tune out. And they think like, well, this is just complex bureaucracy stuff, and I'm not interested. And I'm just going to ask you for these next few minutes, have interest, because this is near and dear to you in making sure that you are financially secure and safe, and you can pay your bills. Again, quick story to start. Before jumping full-time into human rights law, my first job out of law school was at a major bank. My team worked to ensure that the bank complied with the newly formed Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. And this bank had just been fined about $210 million for unethical financial practices. And that fine made the bank realize, hey, we need a team of lawyers who can make sure we are compliant with the litigation requirements here. And that led to a job opening. And then I was hired. And my team, our job was to look at the bank's processes and procedures, riveting stuff, and make sure that they were compliant with the CFPB. I know it sounds boring, but I promise you it actually was pretty exciting because we had to go through this massive operation, this multi-billion-dollar portfolio, and make sure it was compliant. This was nearly 15 years ago. And now, as I watch Trump gut in the CFPB, I get a shiver down my spine because I know what this means. The CFPB exists because of the devastating 2008 financial crisis, which nearly ruined our country. A crisis caused by what? By unchecked corporate greed, by the lack of financial oversight. And so the CFPB was born. It was designed to prevent the next crisis by holding financial institutions accountable. And now that Trump and his billionaire cronies are trying to tear it apart, they're removing one of the most significant protections that we have for financial abuse. And again, this is a bipartisan failure that it got this bad. Because after those bankers and those wealthy corporations screwed over the economy and working people, Obama could have prosecuted them and sent them to prison. He didn't. And that's a problem. Trump could have done that. He didn't. And that's a problem. Biden could have done that. He didn't. And that's a problem. The CFPB was first and foremost about protecting consumers and ensuring that every corporation, every major law firm, every vendor that the bank was working with was also compliant and ethical and legal. And so with this mandate, at my bank, we built a framework from the ground up. We forced the bank to fundamentally restructure its entire infrastructure with consumer interest at the forefront. Before, it was with profitability. Now it was with consumer interest. And a funny thing happens when you put consumer interest at the forefront, profitability takes care of itself. We have to reject this myth that regulation means lost profits. First of all, if it does, it's lost exploitative profits. And those should not be profits at all. That's exploitation. But more importantly, proper regulation means profits that are sustainable, an economy that is sustainable, and people who have a service that they can use, that they can afford, and also benefit from. Everybody wins. It's not a zero-sum game. And so this was a grueling and painstaking process to get our bank to be compliant. But to be clear, it was a grueling process. It was not altruism by the bank. The bank didn't just say, well, we feel generous today. We feel like Santa Claus. Let's just give stuff away. No, the bank acted because the CFPB forced it to act. And the result was that within 30 months, the bank became the gold standard of financial compliance. It earned praise on the House floor as an example that other financial institutions should follow. And guess what? They did. The CFPB's oversight didn't just clean up one bank, it forced an industry-wide shift. It ensured that billions in unethical fees, billions in unethical charges were either returned to consumers or never extracted from them in the first place. And was it a perfect solution? No. But was it a massive step in the right direction? You damn right it was. With the knowledge that the CFPB was watching, banks were that much more motivated to ensure that future policy didn't cut corners and didn't harm consumers. And so these claims that the CFPB is inefficient or irrelevant, these are just mythical claims by billionaires who don't want to have to be accountable to working people. Let me hit you some numbers to explain what I mean of what the CFPB has done. $21 billion, that's the amount of money that the CFPB has put back into the pockets of Americans in the form of monetary compensation, principal reductions, canceled debts altogether due to exploitative actions by banks, and just other general consumer relief resulting from enforcement by the CFPB. $4 billion, that's the amount of money that the CFPB has imposed as penalties on companies and individuals that violate the law. And that money is deposited into the Victims Relief Fund, which then compensates people who have been harmed by those violations. 200 million, the number of complaints by consumers that the CFPB has addressed. $175 million, the amount of relief resulting from 39 public enforcement actions that involved harm to service members and veterans. Veterans were being screwed over by these banks, and the CFPB came in and protected them. And the list goes on and on. They're averaging 3,000 complaints a day. And now the Trump administration has shut them down. And guys, there's work to be done yet. Despite all this, banks are still exploiting people with overdraft fees to nearly $6 billion a year. That tells you that we have work to do because those fees should not exist. And Trump, last weekend, effectively dismantled the CFPB. Their acting director, Russell Vought, who himself is a mega billionaire or mega millionaire, is extremely wealthy, sent a letter saying, quote, immediately cease all supervision and examination activity, cease all stakeholder engagement, pause all pending investigations, end quote. The only reason you would want the CFPB to stop investigating corruption is if you're engaging in corruption. If you're a billionaire corporation engaging in corruption, of course you don't want them sniffing around your pocketbook, sniffing around your accounting ledgers. This is a disaster for working people. It's a massive gift to billion-dollar banks and predatory lenders. And then worse, Vought ordered that the CFPB's internal systems be opened up to staffers from Doge or Dogi or Doggy, whatever the hell Musk calls it. This is horrifying because now all of our private financial information is exposed to a mega billionaire. By the way, this is the same Doge that just revealed that one of their employees was a white supremacist who decries race mixing, who quit, and then Musk rehired an actual white supremacist, and another staffer who was previously fired for leaking company secrets. These are the people that Trump is handing our financial data over to, our private financial data. So let me go back to a minute to that $210 million fine that my former employer paid. The fine wasn't just about punishing the bank. It was about ensuring that every single vendor the bank worked with, the debt collectors, the law firms, the financial servicers, that they were all held accountable. The old excuse was, hey, government, we're doing fine, but we can't control what third parties that we work with do. That was the excuse. And the CFPB said, no. Bull crap. If you're going to work with a vendor, you need to make sure that you're holding them accountable as well. You can't outsource your corruption and say, my hands are clean, they're doing my dirty work. If they're doing your dirty work, then it's your dirty work because you're paying them. That was a huge shift because now it wasn't just about stopping one bad actor. It was about stopping the whole damn chain of command. And now that's gone. That safeguard is gone. Banks and corporations will once again be free to exploit consumers with little fear of consequence, as will their vendors, who are often the ones who provide the direct consumer interaction that each of us experience. So imagine you get screwed by some small organization and you try to file a lawsuit or you try to protest and say, hey, go talk to Capital One. They're the ones. Go talk to Chase Bank. Go talk to Wells Fargo. They're the ones who we're responsible to. And then you go to Chase Bank and Chase says, we didn't do anything wrong. Go talk to the vendor. That's what it was like before the CFPB. And that's where we're going to be right now. Now, the good news is that labor unions are stepping up. The National Treasury Employees Union, which represents CFPB employees, they've already filed 2 lawsuits. But we need to do more because if you have a bank account, your fees are about to skyrocket. If you have a mortgage or a student loan or an auto loan, you have fewer protections and more hidden charges. If you have a credit card, late fees and interest fees are going to skyrocket out of control. My friends, this is not a partisan issue. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. This is class warfare against all of us, waged by Trump and his billionaire cronies. And you need to understand that. I'm not here trying to bash Trump because I will tell you Obama could have done more as well to hold these bankers accountable. He didn't. Trump could have done more. He didn't. And now Trump is going a step further and dismantling the protocols that Obama put in place. And that's a problem. Doesn't matter if you're red and blue, we're all screwed if we allow this corruption to ensue. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. Now you have to follow it because it's a rhyme. Call your elected officials, demand they support the legal action against Trump's attacks on the CFPB, support consumer advocacy organizations, join a union, stay informed, subscribe so you can continue to stay informed. And the bottom line is, as Wajahat said, take small wins, start local, and keep marching on. Because this is not normal. This is not okay. This is economic fascism in real time. And we need to fight against it by standing united for economic justice. I'm extraordinarily explicit when I say whether you are a right-wing MAGA or a left-wing bleeding heart liberal, this will harm you and impact you the same way. Already, farmers in rural parts of the country are getting screwed by Trump for because he shut down the funding from the infrastructure bill. These are MAGA farmers, conservative farmers, who are having to sell their farms because Trump decided, I'm just going to turn off the faucet of the funding that was already promised to them. That's horrifying. That's terrible. That's unacceptable. We need to stand in solidarity with our fellow working class Americans and make sure that we recognize that this boat sinks, it's going to drown all of us. Whew. All right, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on social media at Qasim Rashid across all platforms. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to advance this show that builds on compassion, on justice, on accountability for those in power. We've got a great show lined up next week. Be sure to tune in, same time, same place at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. Or you can listen to it at any time by subscribing on Substack. There is no paywall. My friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice, and continue speaking truth to power. Until next week, peace.